So as it's launching, I would like to basically explain that when we set up a document in InDesign, you have the ability to describe how the document is going to function. So what do I mean by that? You can construct a document that's a single page like this, and every page after that is independent from one another or separate from one another. Or you can create a document where it shares a fold. So these are two pages, but they're sharing a fold. Or you think they're going to be bound. There's a binding. And if that's the case, that feature is called facing pages. So we're going to look at these features here in a few minutes. So you'll notice that it's somewhat similar to Illustrator. You'll see a bunch of icons that represent the recent files that we've worked with. And you'll notice that there's a Create New button. Or I could go to the File menu and say New Document. So I'm just going to go ahead and select Create New. So I'm going to walk you through the file setup. So we're going to create a document for the first time. So this is going to be somewhat familiar to you. You'll notice that we have the ability to look at recent sizes. We have the ability to focus on print documents. Now, one of the things that I'd like to clarify is that when we as designers, when we have the task of developing web-related content or app-related content, there are other softwares that allow us to do this. However, I don't want you to dismiss InDesign as a possibility for a tool to create that type of information. And frankly, when I'm doing my prototyping, when I'm making the early drafts of my ideas that I'm submitting to a client, I prototype everything in InDesign before I go somewhere else because it's so fast and so efficient. So for me, it's really comfortable to stay in this software for the design process. So I design or I work in InDesign probably 90% of my time when I'm developing materials for my clients. And that was the case when I worked in the agencies as well. I was primarily an InDesign user. So most of my day was in this software. So you'll notice that web is a possibility, and there are web dimensions here. And mobile is a possibility, and you'll notice that current mobile devices and dimensions are in this space. So this is basically proving the point that InDesign is not solely a print layout software. It is a software that can be used for these other materials and presentations as well. So I'm going to stick to letter because that's the most common dimension. And I want you to see that on the right, just like Illustrator, this is my file setup features. Now, in this first example, what I want to do is I want to ignore everything that it says here, and I just want to hit create. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in your account because who knows what people were doing there. InDesign basically remembers the last thing that was made, and it sort of remembers those settings. So I don't know what's going to happen, but let's just check and see what it's going to populate on the screen here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And it's thinking. So this is what I get. Looks pretty similar, right? Looks sort of like Illustrator. Just like Illustrator, there's a pasteboard out here where I can store information that's not going in the document. Just like Illustrator, there's a trim on the edge. Unlike Illustrator, I get this. What is this on the inside? What do you think this is called? Starts with an M. It's a margin. So unlike Illustrator, I get a margin. And I can design the margin and how it functions. You'll notice that I have rulers activated. What was the hotkey for rulers in Illustrator? Command R. So Command R toggles the rulers on and off. What about panning? You guys remember panning, moving my document around? What was the hotkey for that? Spacebar. So check it out. Spacebar. Holding the spacebar. How do I zoom in and zoom out? Command what? Command plus and minus. What if I want to frame the document so it fits on the screen? You guys remember the hotkey for that one? Command 0. Somebody said it. Look, you know all of the hotkeys in this software. You learned them in Illustrator. Those same hotkeys are applicable to this software. Now there is one hotkey that's really important in InDesign that's not in Illustrator, and that's place. So remember, InDesign is a compiler. I place information from other softwares and other sources. So in InDesign, the place hotkey is this. What does it say there? Command D. So if you want to place something, it's Command D. That's a little bit different. Now, when we look at our workspace, in Illustrator, I would suggest that you did something before you begin working. Do you guys remember what that was? Reset the workspace. So I'm going to do the same thing here. You'll notice that I have a window menu, just like Illustrator. And when I go to the window menu, there's a workspace. Now, the workspace that I advise my students to work in is the advanced workspace. So I'm going to go to Workspace Advanced, and I'm going to make sure that that is reset. Workspace, Reset, Advanced. So this is the advanced workspace. Now, there's nothing really that advanced about it. So I think it's kind of a funny name because it's not really that complicated. So just like Illustrator, we have a toolbar on the left. Just like Illustrator, I like the toolbar to be set up in 2 columns. Just like Illustrator, I have a fill color and a stroke color. Just like Illustrator, my tools are broken up into categories. Now, you'll notice, are there as many icons here as there are in Illustrator? No, you'll notice that it's a fraction. And most of the icons you're actually already familiar with. So it's kind of nice. You spent the last quarter learning Illustrator, and now we're looking at InDesign, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's the Move tool. That's the Direct Select tool. That's the Type tool. That's the Line tool. That's the Pen tool. I know what that does. Here's the Pencil. And then we have 2 different shape tools. One of them is called the frame, and the other one's just called the shape name. So I have a rectangular frame, rectangular frame, an elliptical frame, and a polygonal frame. And over here, I just have rectangle, ellipse, and polygon. So what's the difference? Frames are used to place images inside of them. Shapes are used to hold a color. Okay. And then we have the scissors. Oh, here's the scale tool. What do you think this one is? Gradient. What about this one? Gradient feather. There's the eyedropper, zoom in, zoom out, and pan. You guys know all of this already. You know this toolbar. So the learning curve is really fast. You are familiar with this toolbar. You should have sort of a good understanding of what's happening here. Now let's go to the right. Now you'll notice that these are the nested panels in InDesign. And unlike Illustrator, the panels here actually are given a name. It's not just the icon, they're given a name. So in UI logic, the most important features are at the top of a list or at the bottom of a list. Things in the middle kind of get forgotten and lost. So something that's really important is going to be at the very top. And that indicates the priority or the order of importance, the order of logic within this software. What is the top panel in this? What is it called? Pages. And below pages, what's the second most important panel? Layers. So the 2 most important panels are right here. Okay, so let's click on the pages panel. So you'll notice that when I activate the pages panel, it opens up nested with layers and links. So here are my layers, and I can construct new layers. You know how to do this already. You're already familiar with stacking order. You know that the layers are named with a given number. You know that each layer has its own bounding box color. You guys are familiar with all of this. Now the pages is something new. The pages actually have 2 areas in it. The first area is this segment that's separated by this bar. What does it say right here? It says master. So what is a master? A master is another word for a template. So this is a template that drives any page that has that letter assigned to it. So what's this master called? A. And what's my first page? You'll notice there's a what on it? A. So this is following the A master. So that means that we can make more templates or more masters, and they're given different letters. You can name them whatever you want. You can identify them with something more meaningful than a B, a C, or a D. You can give them different names, specific names, and you can change their sizes. So InDesign gives me the ability to create masters. Now, below this divider, this is my actual document. So currently in the page panel, it tells me how many pages are in my document. How many pages do I have? One. I have one page in my document. And you'll notice that the page is described with this line right here. Okay. All right, let's make some new pages. So just like making new layers or new information, you'll notice here's that little icon that means make new. And in this case, create a new page. So let's click this button a bunch of times. Let's see what happens. So you'll notice that every time I make a page or click that button, it creates a new page and it constructs the document in terms of pages. And it's following the binding order, right? So you'll notice that page 2 is with page 3, page 4 is with page 5, so on and so forth. So I'm basically constructing a document as I add pages to this. Yes, Thomas?
Is the layout the same when working with apps that put things
No, sir, it's not the same. So this particular document that I am constructing was from the print area, and this is a strategy for a bound printed document. So no, it is not the same for an app or for a website. In that case, we would not have this binding feature, which is described as facing pages. So we would deactivate it. So by default, I said, I don't know what it's going to do on mine. Remember I said I wasn't sure what was going to happen? This is what happened. It gave me facing pages, so it has the bind on it. Okay, so I just want to mention to you, I wanted to point out that the page panel allows me to navigate and construct the pages in my document. And as I zoom out, you can see all of the pages in my document. Does that make sense, everybody?